Tihe Māori ora, te whare etu nei tēnā koe, te papa e wahane tēnā koe, te mana whenua o tēnā rohe, tēnā koutou, te hunga mātai ke te hunga mātai, haere, haere, haere. Te hunga ora ki te tātou, te hunga ora, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Tēnā koe.
Morena, welcome along to this hearing for Invercargill City Council's disability policy. And to those of you joining us on the live stream, welcome. A couple of slight procedural differences today as to other hearings. I have kept this side of the table clear for those joining us later on. Excuse me. With a hearing disability, so that they are better able to see what is going on. When those submitters are taking the opportunity to present, they will be doing so from the front. And as you can tell, we also have interpreters here working in sign language to accommodate. Are there any declarations of interest from any of the committee? I have none. Right, first we'll confirm the hearing's timetable. You've had a chance to have a look through that. You will be aware that hearing slot 4, Carolyn Weston. Carolyn has unfortunately suffered an injury and is unable to be with us today. But I think some additional information, written information, has been provided to us by Carolyn, which we will absorb during that particular time slot. Okay, shall we fire off with the first submitter, Laura? Welcome along. The floor is yours, Laura. Thank you for the submission.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Laura Pope tuku ingoa. My name is Laura Pope and I am the Health and All Policies Advisor at the National Public Health Service. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to be heard today. I take it that our submission has been read. The submission has been written alongside some of our internal staff who have expertise in this area, including our Disability Advisor, Alison Nicholas Dunsmire, and Hawara Māori Advisor, Lisa Turaki. As described in the submission, the social determinants of health enable us to understand how different levels of our global ecosystem influence our own health and well-being. The social determinants of health can help to influence enablers or barriers to our well-being. We understand this because it is important to help our communities which may face added barriers to society. This includes our tangata whaakaha disabled people. It is important to understand the population. Tangata whaakaha disabled people face more health inequities than those who do not have disabilities. And as outlined in the Te Kupinga Hawara Māori modified model in the submission, the inequities for Māori are compounded significantly. The 2013 New Zealand Disability Survey identified higher rates of disability exist in families living in high deprivation communities. People aged 65 or over are more likely to have disabilities, with 59%, than adults under 65 years or children under 15 years. The Youth 19 survey identified that rangatahi who are tangata whaakaha Māori, disabled people who identify as Māori, were more likely to report food insecurity and housing instability with respect to tangata whaakaha disabled people who identify as Pakeha. Within our submission, we have made the following recommendations: improving the language and definitions within the policy, utilising modern documents and strategies like the Enabling Good Lives document, aiming to achieve the accessibility tick for council, improving te tiriti or Waitangi principles, creating a framework for action, and reducing the policy review from 6 years to 3 years so that it aligns with any new disability strategy. From these recommendations, There are three that we believe are important to highlight today. These include the language and definitions, te tiriti principles, and a framework for action. From the hearing agenda, we support the recommendation to change the name of the policy to Equity and Access Policy for Tangata Whaakaha Disabled People. We believe that language is essential in helping to uplift people and ensure that they feel included. It is also important to clearly define any new or relevant terminology within the policy, and we believe that equity needs to be well defined as it is in the name of the title. Our recommendation is to use the Ministry of Health definition. This states, in Aotearoa, New Zealand, people have differences in health that are not only avoidable, but unfair and unjust. Equity recognises different people with different levels of advantage, require different approaches and resources to get equitable health outcomes. We acknowledge and commend Council for including and supporting te tiriti or waitangi in this document. It is our understanding that the principles referenced in the policy, which are partnership, protection and participation, have been used as they are what are identified in the New Zealand Disability Strategy 2016 to 2026. While this might provide consistency, these principles are no longer currently used in common practice. We recommend that the Council use the 5 principles that are outlined by the Waitangi Tribunal. These include tino ranga tiratanga, active protection, partnership, options and equity. A policy is only as effective as it can be implemented, and while this policy and the previous iteration have some great principles which they are aiming to achieve, we feel it is difficult to measure the level of success without a framework of action and an evaluation process. Therefore, we recommend that the Council look to develop a framework that holds the policy to account and takes action for what has been outlined. Some aspects of the framework that would be essential to include would be having a designated staff member or counsellor to champion this space, consistent engagement and an evaluation process. Overall, we are supportive of the policy following some of the recommendations that have been suggested today. We commend Council for having a policy that looks to support and uplift our tangata whaakaha disabled people, and hope that the actions from this will help to enable and enhance the mana within this community. Thank you for taking the time to hear me today. I welcome any further questions.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate the submission and the thought that's gone into it. From the committee, any questions at this point? Fire?
If I may. Tēnā koe, Laura. Tuku mihi ki a koe mō te kaha o te kōrero. I congratulate you on the strength and the depth of your submission and how you've spoken to it this morning. I'm particularly interested in a couple of things that you said. One was about the having staff and also perhaps a counsellor to lead in this space. Given that this, we're here for the ratepayers, not for the citizens of the country as a whole, this is a bit of a challenge for some of us to do some of this stuff, but within our own mahi. How would you suggest that we actually practically apply some of the things that you've asked for, like evaluating our policies and implementing strategies and all those sorts of things in a successful organisation? Have you seen one? How does it, something like ours, a local government type organisation?
Yeah, I think you kind of started on the point that I would raise as a solution, is that having somebody with a key focus within their mahi. So, and that's why I say champion in the space, because, you know, we might not have the designated cost to employ, like we suggested, an FTE in that space, but that might not be a possible approach. I think it's having somebody who has expertise in this space being able to lead approaches for change. I know that certainly within our service that has been effective, and the advisor in this space is from Christchurch, and she had worked alongside the Christchurch City Council, and I know that they have somebody in this space that can lead these processes. So I think it would be really valuable to have somebody that has an understanding or willing to understand and be able to take them forward, or look for, in some instances it could be looking out, so who within the community is willing to support council. I know that we would be willing to help where necessary, yeah.
And just to follow up, so looking at the whole person, which is Te Reo Māori, we have New Zealand Sign Interpreters here today, which is a step up for us, but also we have people who learn in Te Reo Māori New Zealand Sign as well. So there's the capacity, there's the ability. Where do you see council and Te Whatu Ora? How could we work better to make this work?
That's a good question. I think sometimes it is just starting, like taking one step forward, and I think that's the great thing about a policy like this, is it is a step forward in the right direction, and I think it's continuously looking at how we can, I guess, take another step forward in the right direction. I think we're always willing to engage with council in this, within the policy space, or wherever we might be able to assist, but also understand that the community have so much value in this space. So yeah, I think it's looking for ways to engage further, and not just in the policy setting, I guess, but also in other aspects within council. Yeah.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you.
Trish?
Would you see as a sort of step to try and make this work be part of the framework of action? So even though we have this aspirational goals that you've mentioned, but we see it as a stepped process until we get closer to what we want to be.
Yeah, I would agree that, yeah, a framework for action, it gives you the tools to be able to actually, I guess, do something, because sometimes policies say really lovely things, but we need to, I guess, have tools that help us to enact those policies. So yeah, I would agree the framework of action would be helpful in assisting in that space.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions? One from me, just reaffirming from your submission that the advocacy role could equally be fulfilled by an elected representative as opposed to a staff member?
Yeah, I read that was in one of the, maybe in the agenda for today. I think that would equally be able to proceed in this space. I think it just really needs a champion, as I said, yeah.
So having that point of contact that people know to go to.
That is identified, yeah.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, thank you very much for taking the time to join us this morning.
Thank you so much.
Committee members, we will now take a 5-minute adjournment and then we will return to hear from Mr. West. Welcome back. We'll reconvene. Mr. West, thank you very much for making your submission. You're well practiced with the process, and now it's your turn to speak to your submission. Thanks, Vic.
Tēnā koutou, katoa. Ko Victor West, toki ingoa, Morena, Mr Chairman, councillors. I just want to cover 3 areas within the policy document, and the first one is the communication information, and I wonder why our telephone information service, which is been going for a number of years, has not been very active, and why that's not included in the policy document. All it does provide at the moment is the disability policy, the current one, and a number to ring the office if you want further information. Why can't we just have any information posted on the menu so people can access this 24/7 rather than have to wait till the office opens, then ring the office and find out if the person is out, or would you like to leave a message? And I just don't think that, because this should be there all the time. Current information, relevant information they need to know. The majority, or the big percentage of blind people still have landline, and this is how a lot of them still communicate. Some of them are not on, don't try the website or Facebook. And this has been their way of communicating and getting information most of the time. So I want to have further discussion. Well, we need to have further discussion. This is the blind community. We need to have a discussion with the communication team on what kind of information we need to have on that telephone information service. And yes, well, moving on, I'm looking through the policy document, and they mention here facilities and amenities, and there's nowhere here. I think the venue is very important, and I refer to the library room where we've been having a number of meetings there of late. It's pretty echoey, wouldn't you say? Not really good for people with hearing disabilities or like deaf-blind people. And the microphone system really is not very good either. The person who's actually in charge of the microphone, well, there needs to be a protocol around that, and that should be incorporated into a disability awareness training for staff. Well, I don't see any mention of a disability awareness training here. Now, moving on to pedestrian safety and the traffic signals, and these are some of the measures I would like to see particularly in Tay Street, the north-south crossings. I think that crossing time should be extended, and that's been endorsed by the O&M instructor, Corina Duke from Christchurch. Also, D Street on the east-west crossing, dual pedestrian crossing should be installed in Ellis Road to give people the longer crossing time. And due to the increased volume of silent vehicles on the road, they pose a real threat to blind and visually impaired pedestrians. And we need to identify areas where pedestrian crossings can be installed, provide a safe haven for those people. Now, moving on to the signal or the console on the box when you press the button to go across. I just wonder why people hitting the button. I've heard stories about people actually kicking it, and I wonder why this sort of behaviour needs to be tolerated. surely this council should discourage this kind of thing. Or is it just acceptable behaviour managed by the maintenance people? I noticed in Wellington they have a metal strip installed above the button. It juts out about 1.5 inches and it costs about 3 inches, something like around about that. And that discourages people from just exactly what I described, hitting it with their hand. And surely at some point it must weaken the mechanism, I would have thought, and then work to other problems. I also want to talk about the locator beacons, the ones that little beep on the console as you approach them. So from about 12 to 15 feet, most times I can only hear one beep, but not the other. Why? Very few of them act in unison. So I've got to find out where is the other one that I want to cross. If it's going left or go straight ahead, from the other side, is it going right or straight ahead? But you know, I'd like to see that a greater percentage. I know that won't be able to work perfectly everyone, but surely we can get a lot more of those working in unison around the inner city and make it much better to move around. Moving on to the, I've had occasions to ring request for service, and particularly the Lindisfarne Yarrow Street crossing. And I went up and I found it wasn't working. I had just put my ear to it. It wasn't, the cross now was barely audible. And the other tactile and push the button because, well, there was nothing there hardly. And with a lot of traffic around, you wouldn't be able to hear it. So I requested for service one day and went back a week later and there was nothing had been done. At some point after that but I felt that time lag was a little bit unacceptable, quite frankly. And there was one more other thing that Mr. Chairman, I think I just want to make a remark. I think some of the things that I've raised here today should be in part of an action plan that we're going to have further discussions with, and combined disability group and disability organisations should be involved in. Yes, well, I'd like to conclude my submission there, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks, Vic. I think it's probably worth acknowledging that some of the points that you've made in your submission this morning, for example, the telephone information service, disability awareness training, the issues with audio around the crossing signals, operational matters and wouldn't necessarily form part of the policy, but I think your suggestion at the end of an action plan, particularly with the combined group, gives us an opportunity to work through those. Mm-hmm. As for the people who kick rather than push the buttons, I'm not sure what a reasonable answer to that is. There's a saying in the back of my head which I'll let fall out my mouth, is that sometimes you can't help stupid. And we could put a sign up saying don't kick it, but that'd be a waste of effort. But I share your frustration with those things, and I do raise it with people when I see it and get a pretty curt response, to be fair. But thank you very much for the points that you have raised this morning. Councillors, questions please. None? You have a look on your face, Fire, that says there's something forming.
There is, but I'm not sure that it's within Victor's ability to resolve. I take on board the points that you've made, and I understand your frustration about requests for service not seeming to be prompt enough, although I wonder if that's about requiring specialist technicians to do those things, not necessarily being somebody on staff. I'm not here to apologise or answer that question. I'm just not sure though whether a lot of what you've raised can be dealt with by the policy, or whether it's actually something that we need to think about as how we actually do these things going forward. For instance, I was totally unaware about the telephone service, and I imagine that a lot of my fellow table members are similar. It's not something that we come across, but that might be addressed by some of the conversation about the dedicated staff person or the dedicated council lead. But have you any other thoughts about how we could actually do better in those sorts of particular practical matters? Do we need to have the squeaky wheel like yourself ringing us up once every 3 months and saying you're still not doing this, or that still hasn't happened, or and whether a dedicated councillor or staff member might actually have you thoughts about that? It doesn't matter if you don't.
Yeah, sorry.
Struggling to hear you, Fire.
Sorry, did you want a response from me with that? Sorry, I just couldn't quite actually what you're asking me for. I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear the.
That's all right, Vic. I think the answer is actually one you've already provided.
I see. Yeah.
That the action group, and possibly either the suggestion around an advocate, to keep nagging at those things is a good way of getting. I think it was the point Vic made.
Yes, not just the request for service, but a constant monitoring of whatever those particular issues are. And I also didn't really understand the thing about beacons, and I'm not sure that this is for this, but...
That's the audio beacons with crossing signals.
Crossing signals. Oh, there you go. I didn't know what they were called. Thank you.
Okay.
Leslie.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Vic, just wanted to ask about the telephone service. You mentioned it had been going for a number of years, which it has, of course. Can you zero in on a point where you felt things started to go downhill to the point that you're not comfortable? Was it going well for some time?
Well, it was going quite well, but for some reason they decided to say, well, we don't need to do this, and without really too much consultation with the blindness community, I might add, they decided that they wouldn't continue, just have the disability, just put just have that on, the disability policy, and plus a number on there to ring the office. And so they continued to that, and then really, and that's continued for some time, and I just couldn't understand it. I'm pretty sure I've rung several times to get that going up, but all they did is send stuff to the Blind Foundation, and that's probably to do with roadworks, and that's posted on, goes through, people who've got computers, and that's the administration officer at the Blind Foundation, Hannah, will post that on her thing, so that only goes to people with computers and stuff like that. That's about all that's been happening. And I just don't think that's, quite satisfactory, really. That's all we're getting. Surely there's other information, and the information that I would further, the bus transport, information about that, total mobility, there's those two things that come to mind, but there could be other things there too, some about events coming up and the council's involved in, there's a number of things that could be there, could be standing items. They don't have to be, they could be there for a time, but this also be current information, it just has to be there 24/7. I don't know why we need to ring the office just to get this stuff. You know, it's just, it's like, I mean, you know, that people, you know, people need to realise that, you know, the disability is 24/7, not just, it doesn't open when the office opens or whatever, or 5:30 when the office closes, stuff closes down, you know, and so, you know, that's the sort of things I've just raised, but I'm only just voicing my opinion on what sort of information there is, and people might want to have something else, put something else on there. But we need to get some more discussion going with the communication team, the blindness community, Hannah at the administration. I've already told her that I was going to raise this point here this morning.
Thank
I
you
mean,
very much.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Vic. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for taking up the time
Thank
this
you.
morning to come along and speak to your submission. Councillors, we'll take another 5-minute adjournment.
Okay, councillors, we will reconvene, and at this point the next submission is from Joanne Sekone Fraser. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Joanne, and I am born deaf. I'm more audible. I can bear the sign language. I cannot sign myself. I'm helping deaf people who need it's very important to learn sign language. They need by someone like her, Chipla, to have one potato, to help my deaf friend. My deaf friend also to the doctor, to the hospital, you know, need help. They always need on a bone, rely, Chipla, Zoom, they're not very good. They always not very good picture. Yeah. They need to help with Jupiter with the carpet, please. Yeah.
Do you know who we need to apply to in order to try and get that sign language resource in Southland?
Person name wasn't grown? What?
Roger Strong.
Yeah. Wasn't grown. It's a person no more. It'd be his soon to be.
Joanne is saying Roger Strong would know, and he should be coming along later today. He'll have more information.
Thank you. Can you describe some of the frustration with council services that you experience as a deaf person?
I'm born deaf. I'm learning the sign language. I feel interesting, but my hand cannot sign. No, I'm more deaf audible. I went to school, hearing school. I did not go to deaf school. My mum will not take me there. I'm going to hearing school because I'm not mum. I must have sign language years ago until 90. When did sign language start? When sign language started around New Zealand. I didn't know that. When I first come back here from Australia, I was in the deep club. Everybody's sign language. I was freaked out. I can't sign. I keep going backwards. I'm getting new to it. So I when guy teach me cheaper to talk. But this cheaper. Oh, okay. You either are sign. Oh, cool. That works. So they let me in join the zip club. I left 2 rules, here rule and zip rules, 2% 1. So zip people need cheaper, good for them, for doctor and police. I got my family is hearing, no one, I've only zip in my life. Anyway, my family helped me anyway.
Thank you. Councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor Soper.
For the doctor and the police, how would you see, if there was a sign language interpreter, how would you call them when they were needed for those sorts of visits? How would you see that working?
Chip relay, or Zoom, or how to put on a phone. I don't know how. I haven't done before. That I see people doing it. They do the phone, stuff it there. But this way, it's never done face to face. It's what they're doing on the TV. They talk with one another. I haven't done before. I'm sorry. I don't know how. I'm more the hearing world. Yeah. said Philip might know more, he will tell about it. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Further questions, councillors? No? Thank you very much for taking the time
Okay.
to make your submission and to come and sit in front of us this morning. We appreciate it. And thank you also for helping us to understand some of the frustration that you have to live with. Thank you.
I have, yep. Yes, I have. Thank you.
Councillors, if there are no further questions, we will take another brief adjournment. Thank you, Joanne.
Okay, councillors, welcome back, and to those joining us on the live stream, welcome. A slight amendment to the hearings timetable. As I mentioned at the beginning, Carolyn Weston is unable to appear in front of us this morning. We do have some written notes from her to go along with her submission. So we are moving up into this time slot. Roger and Philippa Strong, thank you very much for taking the time to join us. It's now over to you.
Thank you. For those of you who don't know us, I'm Philippa Strong and I'm the Treasurer of the Southland Deaf community, and Roger's on the Executive Committee. He did have time on the, as being the chairperson for quite a number of years, and that he's stepped down this year. But anyway, what we're actually fighting is that we need interpreters in Invercargill. A lot of deaf people, and that they don't know what to do, what they can go to and attend to, and they can't afford the newspaper to be able to get information and that of what they can attend. They're unable to hear the radio, and no interpreters at events. On Saturday, the Disability United Forum was held at the public library, which included some guest speakers. An interpreter was arranged through iSign. A meeting ID and password was sent to us. At 1:45 p.m, I tried the meeting ID and password, but it kept coming up on the screen of our laptop, no such meeting ID. I automatically thought it was because I was trying too early, so I waited until 1:55, same message. So I contacted the interpreter. She was having the same problem, so I asked her if she could send me another meeting ID number, which she did, but by the time I got Zoom up and running, we had lost about 15 minutes. If we had a permanent sign language interpreter based in Invercargill full-time, these sorts of things would not be happening. We need a full-time interpreter based here in Invercargill so as members can attend events, appointments, shows, concerts. Deaf people should be treated equally. Deaf people have rights. As the Southland Deaf community have a lot of older members, they aren't up with the modern technology. For example, going through iSign to book an interpreter, they would rather it be face-to-face, which I totally agree with them. Every main city should have an interpreter. There shouldn't be a cost involving this. If an interpreter needs to assist someone who is deaf, that should be the way it is. They don't ask to be deaf. The Southland Deaf community has about 13 to 15 members. There are also about 80 children in Invercargill that I know of. We are going to continue fighting this to get an interpreter based in Invercargill, as we are very strong in supporting this. A few years ago, Nelson went through the same thing, and their council actually helped them and supported them, and they now have an interpreter. We have to stand up and be strong. Thank you for your time today. Many thanks, Philippa and Roger Strong, Southland Deaf Community.
Thank you for that. Can I ask what was done in Nelson, what the council were able to do to assist? The chairperson in Nelson, she got in contact with the city council, and they actually fought and were able to get an interpreter for Nelson, which Nelson now have an interpreter. Are you able to provide us with the contact details of the people who were involved in that process, so maybe our staff could talk to them to understand more?
Yeah, I can do that. I haven't actually got it with me
No.
now, but I can follow it up and get it sent through to you.
That would be really useful. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Councillors, any questions? Councillor Boyle.
Good morning. Hello. I can't see how an interpreter would be available to all of the people when they need it. Have you got any answers for that? You know, do you know how it operates in other places?
What was it? Sorry.
Sorry, if we had a designated interpreter, how would the people access it when they wanted it?
Oh, right. They would still have to go through probably iSign, and then to book the interpreter, and that because like even if we had an interpreter based in Invercargill, they could be on another job, and that, you know, so or they'd still have to go through iSign.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you would have one interpreter. There may be many times the interpreter's not working. I suppose we can look and see how Nelson manages that.
Yes, yeah. And that, because like I actually even Googled it to see whether Nelson's got a bigger population climate to what we have, and I think they're just a bit smaller than what Invercargill is, you know, but like for an interpreter to have to travel backwards and forwards from Dunedin and that, you know, it would make more sense if we had one down here permanently.
Thank you.
Philippa, I wonder if you could explain a little about the Speaksy application that you've provided information on.
Yeah, what actually happened, Roger and I have just actually come back from Fiji, and my brother-in-law did a bit of research, and that's how that's actually all come about. So then I rang this number, and she told me to ring the, what was his name? I'll find his name now. Terry Weston. And so I rang him, and he said that what actually happens is that you actually have to have a internet connection, and then you have these microphones. So say for example me, and it would be coming up on the screen. So then Roger would be able to actually be reading it. It's not, and I said, can they do sign in that on it? And he said no, that they can't. It's just really from mic to the actual screen. But
So it converts voice to text.
That's right. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Councillor Soper.
Thank you, Philippa. Going back to the sign language interpreter, the Nelson example, the person's not a volunteer, I'm presuming. So are you aware of how they are being paid for their time? Because it must be a job.
Yes. So they will get, the interpreters will get paid through. How do you get paid? Friday, do you get paid through iSign, or is it Te Whātua?
Sorry, the interpreters can't contribute to the proceedings today.
Oh, right,
Sorry,
okay, no worries. I'm unsure on that one. So I'm pretty sure that it's either that they'll get paid through iSign or Te Whātua. Yeah.
So they're employed by one of those organisations.
Yes, yeah.
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 Okay, thank you.
Reverend Cook.
Yeah, following on from that, is the process that's required, I mean, we have 2 interpreters here today, so even saying that there needed to be an interpreter based in Invercargill, one interpreter on their own would not really be sufficient to meet the needs of the community, would they? It would have to be more than one.
Yeah, well, it was. See, the thing is that it would also depend on, well, like if it was, say, for a concert, or say, for example, you'd need 2 interpreters, and it's the same with likes of funerals and that usually as well, and that they'll have 2 interpreters, and that, but they'd have to probably send one down from Dunedin, and that if we were able to have one based in Invercargill.
And I mean, a follow-up to that is, I imagine that there are similar criteria for New Zealand sign interpreters as there are for te reo interpreters, so therefore the person is required to meet a certain standard as accredited. How do you see the city or Southland competing for the services of a scarce resource like that, because how do we create the environment? No, that's the wrong way to say it. We
Scarce
cannot
resort,
compel
like-
people to come here. What do we need to do to build capacity within Invercargill, I suppose, is because it would need to be qualified trained. Is that right?
Yes, yeah.
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 So how do we do that?
Good. Can you answer that?
Can I respond? I'll stand. Hello. My name is Roger Strong. I was the president previously, but I've stepped out of the role for the Southland Deaf community, and have also been on the board for Deaf Aotearoa in the past. I would visit, they would speak, we would have interpreters. It was very difficult, and it's been very hard here in Invercargill because we have a small deaf community. We've had interpreters in the past here, but they stepped down, and we couldn't understand why they left their role, and they wouldn't tell us, and we couldn't understand why. We want interpreters here in Invercargill, and when we had them it was excellent, and it's very frustrating for us now and creates a lot of barriers. If you want to go to the doctor, you can't understand what they have to say. If you get an interpreter on a laptop, quite often the picture will freeze. They'll have to go back and sign it again. We've had it in the past where we've had interpreters face to face and it's been smooth sailing. And without interpreters, it's very difficult. We have members and we need interpreters. And it's really hard. It's hard for us in our lives. Hearing people are comfortable. They can have lots of conversations, and deaf people just a lot of frustrations. It's not equal. We need interpreters here in Invercargill. And please, I want them to be here. Philippa has helped us so much, but it's very hard. It's hard even to communicate with my own wife. I thank the interpreters who've come down today. I was quite shocked to see that you were here. It's really comfortable and it's lovely to see.
Thank you. Councillor Soper?
Can I ask if there have been interpreters in the past, how did they arrive in Invercargill? You don't know why they left, but how were they recruited to come to Invercargill?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
So it's quite a few years ago since there was an interpreter in Invercargill working with the community.
3 or 4 years? Roughly 3 or 4 years ago.
Thank you.
All good.
Councillor Boyle?
Is it possible that those records would be available in your board papers of how they came? I mean, we may be able to find out where they were acquired from.
I'm sure that there will be.
Yes.
Yeah,
You go, Philippa.
Yeah, I'm sure that there will be. She came, I think, from Auckland originally, and she came down here, and then she, and what actually happened was, why she actually gave up doing sign language was that one of their members became unwell and he was actually in hospital. And the interpreter was actually in the North Island at the time, and she couldn't get back down here to be with him, and she told them at Southland Hospital that he needed an interpreter. Well, unfortunately, our member actually passed away, and he actually passed away on his own with no interpreter being able to assist him in that, which was actually quite sad. And that, so it was just too much, unfortunately, for our interpreter, and she ended up having to give up that role.
Thank you.
I agree that when people are going to the doctor, they're not finding interpreters for them.
Further questions or comments? Roger and Philippa, anything else you would like to add?
No,
I think it's much of a muchness. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for coming along. We appreciate the fact that you made a submission, but also for giving up the time to appear in front of us this morning.
Okay, thank you.
Councillors, we will again take an adjournment.
Thank you.
Welcome back. We'll reconvene this committee meeting, hearing. Tracy, thank you very much for your patience. Welcome along. Again, you're very familiar with the process. The time is yours.
I'm indeed. Hey, thanks, guys. I'm actually here representing the Combined Disability Group and Disabled United, the Paraplegics Foundation, and a few others. In this room, there's a diverse range of people. Just as disability is very, very diverse and very, very different, and there's not a one size that fits all. But there are some generalities that can help us. And policy is only as good as the actions that follow it. And my previous experience with disabled policy relating to the council has been kind of dismal. The Combined Disability Group and the rest of the disabled community have been having lots of fascinating conversations, Roger and Philippa and Caroline, as you're aware, and a whole lot of us. And there seems to be an overwhelming theme that I'd like to bring up, and Laura touched on this during her submission this morning, and that is having somebody within the council that I, a ratepayer and a member of the public, can go to and say, hey, we have this challenge, can you help us with this? And we actually have a solution to offer. Sorry, Darren, it's not you, honey. We suggest, respectfully, that the council consider Danielle Carson, who works with the Combined Disability Group, as the advocate. Danielle has first-hand experience of what disability is through her family. She liaises with the disability community incredibly well. She's also employed by the staff, employed by the council, so she knows the language that works best within the council facilities amongst the staff and that. Having one person to go to, rather than picking up that phone and going to the nice receptionist, I've got this challenge, and the receptionist ever so kindly is going, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do here, let me pass you to 10 different people. Whereas if the disabled of Invercargill had somebody to go to in the council who does not have a public agenda or a political agenda. I know somebody suggested an elected official. I've been in contact with my peers this morning, and while we respect you people, we don't want an elected official as our advocate, because you are an elected official and you may not stay in your office for long. We want somebody neutral who really knows us, who knows where we're coming from. We don't care about political correctness. We actually, quite frankly, couldn't give a stuff. What we care about is respect, courtesy, and having an honest conversation with the staff. And we've had some fantastic conversations with your staff. It hasn't been waffle or anything like that. It has just been blunt, straightforward conversations, and we've gotten so much done. Danielle didn't know that we were actually going to ask whether she could be our advocate. It was an idea that Combined Disability Group and the disabled community came up with, because she's earned our respect and she's earned our trust. Rihanna and Kat and Darren, they are absolutely amazing. That team, they're really, really good. You're really lucky to have them. But Danielle's just got something a little bit extra that is really, really important for us. She knows firsthand where we're coming from. She never makes us false promises. She listens to what we've got to say, and she goes to find the correct person within council to get the information that we need. Maybe even set up a meeting when we've asked for it. And we think this will be really, really good because, as I said, there's so much diverse disability in our community. But having somebody that we can go to who has the contacts, and Danielle does. She's got the contacts right through the community. She knows Philippa and Roger. She knows us. She knows Carolyn and Melissa and the rest of the team and Mike. And just take a huge amount of pressure off everybody. If there was one person, if somebody rings the council and says, hey, got a little bit of a problem with this pedestrian crossing, or I want to attend a council event you're going to have interpreters. Having that one person that can have that information and go, right, this is what we need to organise, and yes we do or no we don't, and explaining why, or asking the questions is how do we get this sorted. It makes a world of difference. It certainly takes a lot of pressure and angst out of the situation and makes everybody a heck of a lot comfortable. So that's my submission. Mike, my husband, who also did a submission, has pretty much said the same thing. Having somebody with that lived experience that we know and we trust, and trust for the disability community is really, really important. The Enabling Good Life principles, one of the key principles is nothing for us without us. In the past, there's been a history of well-meaning professionals making decisions about the disabled. And the disabled have gotten a little bit sick of that. Maybe we've been watching too many French films about the revolution. But we want to be included. We want to be heard. We don't want somebody else making the decisions for us. We actually want our voice heard, and we want to see some real action. So your disability policy, if you're going to have a policy, use it. Please don't do what you did with the last one and put it in a filing cabinet and forget about it for a number of years. Because I remember a meeting that I attended, Darren, at the council buildings, and during the conversation, I can't remember who it was somebody said, do we have a disability policy? And you answered, yes, we do. And for a council member at that table to have actually said, do we actually have a disability policy, was hilarious, but really disappointing that you didn't know and that nobody really knew what was in it. As to disability awareness being in a policy, yeah, that's actually really, really important. Because if your staff don't have training or knowledge as to how to relate to people with disabilities, then your staff are at a severe disadvantage, and it's actually really, really unfair. You give your staff, when you employ them, an orientation as to their jobs. This is where your tea break is, this is where the restrooms are, this is where you put your locker, this is what you do. You also need to include disability awareness. It's actually really, really important. If Roger was to walk into the council and go up to the reception desk and smile sweetly at that nice young woman behind the counter, and she says, "Good morning, sir, how may I help you?" And Roger begins sign language, that poor young woman behind the counter is probably going to go, "Oh, right, I'm not quite sure what to do." Disability awareness training is actually really, really important. And we're a minority group that anybody can join. We're the only minority group, actually, that anybody's welcome to join. I hope that you don't, but if you do, if you find yourself with a disability and you're having to react with your city officials, you want to have a good experience. And most of us, we're not having a good experience. Your staff are polite, but they don't know what the heck they're doing. And it's not their fault. You need to train them. And there are plenty of us in the community, like myself, Melissa, Carolyn, for instance, and we all know Carolyn, who can help with disability awareness training. And as we're all getting older, the city does need to adapt for its citizens. And a disability policy is really, really fundamentally crucial to our society. And it's not that hard to get it right, people. It's actually quite easy to get it right. Ask Darren, he's been involved with our community for ages, he's really good at it. So anyway, that's me.
Thank you, Tracy, as always, for your submission. I'm going to allow myself as chair the opportunity to step out of the strict questions role. And first of all, at a higher level, thank you for your feedback on the staff member that you've been dealing with. It's very nice always to get that positive feedback, and we are pleased that you have that positive interaction. It is beyond this committee's ability to deal with an operational matter as to how someone is assigned, but if I go above that and try and surmise what you're saying is that you don't want an elected advocate, although we are here for 3 years and someone can resign after 3 months as a staff member.
You would prefer somebody who was appointed as a staff person for the disability community to go
Yeah,
to?
because no offence to elected officials, but you have a political agenda, whatever that may be. We need reality. We don't need political correctness. Political correctness gets us nowhere. When you have a disability, your world is very, very different. It's lots and lots of shades of grey, and sometimes it's really quite like black and white. I'll give you an example of something. A while ago, I wanted to go into a dress shop here in Invercargill in my wheelchair, and I went towards the door. The lady who was just inside the window there saw me, reached over and locked the door. I thought, oh, maybe they're just, not open today, so I carried on down the road. And then a couple of minutes later, a lady tapped me on the shoulder, and she said, I was in that dress shop. And I said, oh, I thought they were closed. And she said, no. She said, I was about to buy an outfit for a wedding. And she said she asked the shopkeeper why she locked the door. You know what the shopkeeper said? She didn't want my kind in there. This still happens today. That particular lady who tapped me on the shoulder decided not to shop at that store and went elsewhere. Thing is that we don't need political correctness, we need reality. And that when you're dealing with disability, it's tough. It is really, really tough. It's more expensive, it's harder. You try wheeling around these footpaths in a wheelchair with a slope like this. The amount of times I've gone very, very close to cars and smiled at people and said, I'm not really aiming at your car, it just looks that way. But if you're going to have a policy, make it real and make it enforceable. And as you've heard from others, having somebody, I know you can't make an operational decision, but if there is somebody like Danielle, and if Danielle is willing, why not expand that role and have that? If you've already got somebody in the role, it's not creating a new job, perhaps it's expanding. I don't know enough about the staff roles to comment on what their duties and so forth are, but if you've got somebody there, and perhaps she's willing, I don't know, you have to ask her, but if so, that solves a lot of challenges and a lot of frustrations that we experience all the time. Just saying, just a thought. By the way, guys, we do love you.
Councillors, questions?
Tēnā koe, Tracy. I'm not sure that most of the people with whom I sit at table have a political agenda. I think most people have some personal inspiration to come, and I think that that's different. But I take your point. When I looked at the comments about having a staff member or a council lead, I thought, well, why not both? Because we actually fulfil different roles, and I think I'm really fairly well known by now for saying things that are not necessarily what everybody else at the table is thinking. So this is what I'm going to say. I think somebody like me who walks has a different perception of going around the city than a person who only drives. A person who catches the bus, such as I, have a different perception. I see that I can advocate for a pedestrian, for a person who can't afford a car or doesn't have a driver's licence. I don't believe that I would be incapable of advocating, or anybody like me at this table, for advocating for disability needs. But I do understand that I don't necessarily have the lived experience that you have. Why can't we have both? Why shouldn't we have both? If we had both, would it be better? If you had a council table member that you could approach directly at the political level, what you're saying is the political level, is that a disadvantage? And would it help your cause? Just posing a question.
Actually, there are about 10 of them in there, so good luck, Tracy.
I don't have my...
Yeah. Yes, you could have both. And I'm going to be direct, and this is not meant to offend anybody, but working with the disabled community, you require trust. And I can't use a bus in Invercargill because I'm in a wheelchair and I can't get my wheelchair as narrow as it is off the bus without flipping the wheelchair. So that's out to me. And I've had conversations with the council about accessing the buses, and it's never going to get resolved because the buses that we've got are the buses we've got, and it's just the way it is. Pedestrian crossings. Are you aware that not all the bricks and that are level out there? We did a walking tour recently with some of your staff, and it was a really, really good walking tour. And we showed some of the staff some of the real dangers that we encounter every day. Are you aware what those dangers are? Can you actually name what the dangers are that we encountered, that we showed your staff?
I know
Can
the
you
ones
treat that
I
as
face.
rhetorical fire?
Yeah, it is rhetorical.
Thing is that trust is crucial. Some people in this room here have earned the trust of the disabled community. They've earned it over years by actually walking alongside us and coming to our events and things. And so they've earned that respect and their trust. They also are aware of where not to cross a boundary. And for us, we collectively want somebody, or persons, plural, if there's a couple of you, we'd love to have Darren. Darren? Just saying, Darren. But
Not
we
known
want...
for your subtlety, Tracy.
You're welcome, sweetie. Thing is that the disabled, it has been very, very difficult for us for decades. And it isn't getting any easier with all the cuts from March the 18th. It has meant that we are even more wary. And it is literally a relationship of trust. That we can call somebody at the council. They were not necessarily going to make any promises. We don't want promises. We just want to have an honest conversation and say, hey, look, we're having an issue with the tactile strips on this pedestrian crossing because they're in the wrong location. And we need to know that that person actually understands some of the fundamentals of how a person who is sight impaired gets around. Or there's council events coming up, and somebody with a hearing impairment wants to attend those events, but they want to know whether there's going to be an interpreter and what the council's going to do to get it. Not a case of, well, how many people are going to turn up to make it worthwhile. It's about starting inclusion and starting a different conversation, saying, we want to include people. So, rather than have to be pushed to do or get an interpreter, we're going to do our damnedest to supply one. Or parking. We're going to do what we can to ensure that parking is practical and realistic for people with mobility issues. It's a different conversation. It's not about us justifying our existence. Been there, done that, got t-shirt, wore it out. What we want is our voice to be heard and to be recognised. We are realistic. We know that we can't have everything we want or everything we need. We get that. But there are things that can be done to make it better for us. And Philippa and Roger touched on the library room. We had a meeting there, Disabled United, on Saturday. It's a good venue. But are you aware the only lift in that building that I can use to get upstairs is a service lift? Because I can't get up the ramp from the other lift. And the other lift I can't get in because it keeps trying to squash the wheelchair. It's got a serious attitude. But the echo in that room means that it's very difficult for people to hear. And while there are council staff with skills to sort out some of the links with regards to Zoom meetings and things, there wasn't anybody available on Saturday, which is kind of disappointing because we'd booked well in advance and we explained what our needs were. But there were no communication staff on duty. There was nobody who had checked to make sure that the council facility was going to actually work for our friends who are hearing impaired. And it was really frustrating. And it got really embarrassing, actually, that was a frustration that we inflicted on our friends. And it didn't need to happen if simple things had been checked. So that's why we need people who we can call and say, hey, look, Daryl, we're going to have this thing on the weekend and we want to use this facility, we've booked it, we've organised an interpreter, is everything set up? Oh yeah, Trace, no problem. I've talked to the communication teams, it's all done. At the moment, we can't do that. Because we can call and say, oh, we want to use this meeting room, and the library staff are neat. And they go, oh yeah, no problem. And then we go, well, we're going to have an interpreter. And they're going, So, yeah, we need something different. And we're asking for it. And yeah, we're going to push, politely, but we are going to push. Just saying.
Shot fired over the bow. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
And noted that it was politely fired. Thank you for not hitting. Thank you for making the submission. Thank you for sharing your experiences this morning.
Thanks, guys.
Councillors, again, we will take a brief adjournment.
Okay, welcome back. We'll reconvene the hearing. Next submitter has joined us on Zoom. Kathy, nice to see you. Looks very tropical at your place. I suspect that's not exactly where you are at this present point of time, but thank you for your submission, and the next 10 minutes or so are yours.
Thank you very much. You know, I was looking at the background thinking, it's not what it's like outside. Thank you for letting me speak on my submission. I chair a CCS governance committee, the LHC, and we've discovered in recent years how to engage with council via the submissions to provide the voice of the disabled people we support. We've also engaged with council staff on certain matters, gaining an insight into the need to prioritise issues and realise funding is needed to do the works required. It would be awesome to see from time to time reports on achievements done to reflect how our city is becoming a more inclusive community. And only yesterday we held our monthly meeting and we met with Doug Rogers, and during the discussion he was saying how you need to prioritise the issues that we bring to the council's attention, and one was the one recently about how the $150 fine for the mobility parking is going to go up to $750, and Doug did say it's a pity they didn't look at perhaps phasing that in because it's such a big chunk, but because it's mandated by the central government, we understand it's got to be. But he did advise us that the council is going to create informational signs to go up at the mobility parks. So basically it's going to be a way of informing the public that if you don't have a mobility card, then you're not entitled to park in that park. So that just showed me that the staff and council are aware of issues and are also looking how to meet the needs. And because of this, we have in our disability circles enabling good lives. Well, council is doing that by providing that service, so we're really thankful for that. And basically I like the policy. I think it's got room to grow, but it's a major big step from what it has come from. So were there any questions you wanted about my submission that I did put in?
Thanks, Kathy. Councillors. Hi.
Yes, Kathy.
Could you pull that mic right in, please?
You've referred to the inaccessible ground cover at the new Tuatara Island, Motiri. Just, has that been referred to our parks team and the design team? Because my understanding is that the ground cover is actually supposed to be accessible. It was supposed to meet the standard. So has that actually been notified to the appropriate people?
I have shared that in discussions with somewhere, but that's something that we could approach them with. No, we could follow up on that. I think I haven't actually gone and seen the ground cover myself, but I've heard people in wheelchairs and also pushchairs, it's hard to move over it. I understand it's like a gravel, but you can get compacting. Is it dunite or something that'll compact down? So perhaps that might be another strategy for the committee to get someone from Parks to come along and speak to us at a meeting on that.
Doesn't need to form part of the policy decision, but I'm sure we can help facilitate.
No, and that was, I guess, my point, is that some of these matters are not a policy matter, but an actual practical operational matter. But thank you, Kathy, for your submission.
You're welcome.
Further questions?
Oh, sorry.
No, you're right, Kathy. Sorry, was there something else you wanted to add there?
Well, because of this policy, I've been like submissions. I think the first time I ever did one on behalf of these years was the car parking, and then it started me looking at things and I've gone along to Sandy Point and Donovan Park, and within all those submissions that we've been able to put in, we've talked about accessibility, and like I've got in my submission about the museum build and the Grace Street project. There are two places where we can step up looking at accessibility, and that'll meet the needs of everyone, like the senior people as well as young families and that. So, and when I've put in there also about putting information about current issues that happen, I often look in the Express and see what council has been doing. So that's letting the public know also that you're aware and working for the good of the disabled community.
Thank you, Kathy. We appreciate the submission and the time you've given up to join us from a sunny beach somewhere in Drury Lane.
Yeah, probably near enough for me. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Kathy. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillors, we will now take another brief adjournment before our final submitter, which will be Jamie. Welcome back. We'll reconvene the hearing. Our next submitter is Jamie Rundhawa. Welcome. Thank you for your submission. And the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much. My name is Jamie, and this is my sign name. I identify as deaf and disabled. I carry both identities with pride. I grew up here in Invercargill until I was 10. I love Invercargill. But recently I've seen a number of barriers here in Invercargill that are not fair and are not equitable for deaf people, and from my perspective, these are barriers to service. For example, organisations. A barrier I've recently experienced was that I couldn't get interpreters when I went to the emergency department. I asked the staff, can you get me someone who signs? They said there was no one. It was very disappointing and disheartening, and I was very ill at the time. I was frightened, I was scared. It impacted my mental health not to have this access. It was not good enough. At the time, my husband was trying to interpret for me, but my eyes were sore and tired. My ears were sore. My whole body was aching. I wasn't happy. That's just one example. We need interpreters here in Invercargill. Another example, also from my own life, if there was a serious flood or fire or car accident, if anything were to happen, there would be no staff that could sign. They do not have the skills to explain that to us. That would be very frightening. The staff wouldn't know what to do. They might try and give us information, but they would expect us to lip read. They wouldn't provide it in NZSL because they don't have the skill. It's not fair for us. It's not fair for the deaf community here in Southland. We've tried our best to give this information to you, but people run their own businesses here in Invercargill. I teach them NZSL. I have a business name, and it's called Everybody Signs. I've gone out to various people in the community of all ages to try and help them, to provide access for them. But it's very tough here in Invercargill. If I want to get information from the council, it's not accessible. It's high register language. It's not well broken down. For instance, if I wanted information about our new museum build, it's an inaccessible document. The language is not easy to read. It needs to be broken down in English and also provided in NZSL. We need plain information so that people can access it. That will help a lot of people in Invercargill, because a lot of people would struggle to access information that is described the way those policy documents are. We also need to have interpreters for things. What happens in the event of an emergency, like a flood? That's happened here before. We've had these situations. We had a situation in Gore. There was a flood. Maybe one or two of the deaf people who were living there said that they couldn't get any information. If something terrible were to happen in Invercargill, how would we get information about that? Where from? I just don't know. It's a massive barrier for us, and it is about our safety and our well-being. Provide us with information in NZSL. Provide captions. That will help. It's not only for me, it's for people of a number of different ages as well. In the deaf community, there are adults and young people. So it's for all of us, and it's about including all of us. I also have a disability. I have CP, cerebral palsy, which means getting around the city gives me anxiety. It impacts my mental health. If I need to get across the road in the time that the light provides, it's very fast, and I worry and I panic as I'm trying to cross. And I feel that way all the time when I'm going to the traffic lights to cross. And also, the roads here are curved. They go up in the middle. So when I'm crossing, I'm sort of going uphill. If I were to trip, I'm very scared about what would happen. So we need to make sure that Invercargill is safe. And make sure that all of the buildings have been checked. Are there lifts? What's the state of the escalators? These need to be checked to make sure that they're compliant with health and safety for the people that need to use them. There are a lot of things here at Invercargill that could be improved in the future. But the future starts now. And we need to be doing more now to improve access and to help a large portion of our society. This is for our health and our lives. We want to reduce the impact on people's mental health and help everyone to feel that they are included and allow their voice to be included, as we have done today. And I want to thank you for including interpreters today. And that means that our recommendations can truly come across. This is what disabled people want. They want their voices to be listened to. It's so important to see us as people within your community. There are many individuals with many diverse needs, but we have lived experience. But if you build up a safe Invercargill, then we can make connections. And we will feel that, yes, it's sustainable and it's good for us and for our future. So please consider our safety. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Councillors, questions?
Yes, that's fine.
Trish?
You mentioned a lot of things that needed fixed or that you had difficulty with. What is the one thing that would make a significant difference now, the first thing?
Having more staff that learn NZSL. At the moment, I'm trying my best myself. I operate free classes, and I've invited staff from various organisations to come along and learn just some simple NZSL. So I've put that option out there. But I would like more people around Invercargill to learn. For example, people who work at the fire brigade, people who work in emergency services, people who work at council. Anyone here who is part of the services of Invercargill, it will be useful to learn. We don't have interpreters here, it makes it very difficult, and we can't have one all of the time. But I'm hoping that time, as the deaf community grows, I hope that we will have interpreters here. But I want staff to learn more. I want it to be out there in the community, so that we can have simple access to services. So if I go to the doctor, or I make an appointment of some kind, whatever it happens to be, someone has a little bit of deaf awareness. They know about the deaf community. They know about deaf culture. They understand that there is a deaf way of being. They understand that sign language exists. That would make me so happy. If people could just understand that, it would be a massive relief.
May I ask how long it would take someone to get a basic understanding of how to sign?
Well, so we do units. So for a level 1 unit, I think it would take maybe, so there are 9 units altogether, and I cover a few of them. But I think in 8 weeks, you could have a basic sign language conversation. You can talk about simple things. You know, you could introduce yourself. You would learn finger spelling. You know, you'd learn a little bit about deaf culture in the community. You learn a lot in that time. And that's just with 8 weeks. But a lot of my students come back because they want to have more fluency. You know, and we can cover different topics. And we do. And it's so valuable. I've seen students, their confidence just soars. They're so happy when they learn sign language. And it's kids as well. You know, they really are so happy that they're a part of the program. They see me signing, and then they sign, and they just think, oh, great. But it depends on what your aim is with your sign language. You know, for some people, 8 weeks is enough. For some people, it's an ongoing journey to learn language. Whatever education people are willing to engage in, we'll teach.
Thank you. Councillors, any further questions? Right?
Kia ora, Tracy. Thank you, because I think what you've highlighted is the importance for the whole country of acknowledging that New Zealand Sign is a legal language. So it's not just the council alone that needs to address this issue. This hearing is giving you a voice, and I thank you for taking the time to make us all aware of the challenges and the benefits of being multilingual, because that's not New Zealand way. How do we as an organisation contact and contract you, or people like you? Is there a directory? Do our staff have that information? Because I can see the value.
Okay, so you can contact me via Facebook. I'm on Facebook. Every sign. So there's myself. I teach. And I teach a variety of community members. Whoever is interested. I work with deaf people, disabled people. Anyone from the community is welcome, and I'll teach them. They just contact me, and I'm happy to teach them. That's how it goes. You're right when you say this is a New Zealand-wide issue. This is about equity for everyone. But in terms of NZSL, it is an official language and has been since 2006, April of 2006. But it's taking a long time to get the recognition. We're taking slow steps towards it. And for deaf people, this is going to be an ongoing battle. And it takes up a lot of our time to get that equity, to have our language treated as English and Māori are treated in NZSL, and to have them all be on an even keel, and not have NZSL treated as less than. So thank you.
Further questions? If not, Jamie, during your submission, you acknowledged the challenges that you have in getting around, travelling about town, and anxiety. Thank you for going to the effort of pushing through that and appearing in front of us today and sharing the information that you have.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate that you were here to listen to me about the things that I wanted to raise. I love Invercargill. You know, I only want to see it getting better for all people that live here, and to see these problems resolved not only for myself, but for all of the city, regardless of who. So thank you.
Councillors, we will take a final adjournment and then return for our deliberations.
Welcome back. We'll reconvene the hearing. Before we go into deliberations, Rhiannon, in the documents are some of the responses to points that were made in the written submissions, both those that we heard from this morning and those who just purely wanted to submit in writing. And we will be receiving all those formally very shortly. But is there anything of note that you'd like to change or any comments that you would like to make?
Nothing to change, Chair. Just probably worth making a few points just in relation to the report, although we'll take it as read. Firstly, just to say that it is really pleasing to get to this point, because we have been working with the Combined Disability Network and broader disability community on this review for quite a while. Many of the points that have been raised around the policy and around implementation of the policy are well reflected in terms of Council's work that we've been doing over the last few years in this area. The policy itself, it has been in place for quite a while. The changes that are being proposed and were consulted on were worked on with the Combined Disability Network. They were not too significant in nature, and a lot of the conversation, as we've heard today, has been around operational matters, how the policy is actually implemented in practice, and that's something that myself personally and my team, we've been really pleased to be involved with in helping make those connections between the disability community and individual members and the wider council. And there's been many reports that have been brought to this table and various initiatives like the recent tour of the roading area that we've been pleased to support and be involved with, as well as engagements on things like the design process for the museum, as well as long-term planning processes. I think just maybe a couple of points in relation to some of the issues that have been raised today by a number of the submitters. Firstly, around sign language, I think just really important to hear the frustration of the deaf community in that area, and it's something that we as council officers have also experienced that frustration. We have had a number of different conversations with Deaf Aotearoa and iSign around how can we make sure we're providing that support. So when it is requested, we have been providing sign language support remotely, which does bring its own technical challenges because there isn't that resource within the community. It is a skilled thing, being a sign language interpreter, so not something that possibly can be developed overnight. It's also been an issue that I know that local MPs have also been discussing with the disability community. So we are, wanting to look at what are the options around how we can continue to support. And I think that's something that then links to that point of whether we have an action plan, and that's something probably for you as councillors to consider in your deliberations. Some of these, the issues around implementation will by necessity be budget linked, and so I think just something to consider, as my report states, is considering this in the light of the next long-term plan and really preparing in that mindset. I think also to note that Council has for many years supported the Combined Disability Network through providing administrative support for that group, which we continue to do. And we have provided as part of that regular connection to other areas of the business while trying to balance the needs of that group to talk about other non-council related issues, which is also why they exist for those support agencies. And that has been a balance that's fluxed and moved over time. So I think probably just something to consider, the difference between advocating and connecting, and where that kind of line lies. And that's hence my report saying, possibly if we're looking for advocate support, then that really is a governance type issue that can happen around this table. Our role as staff across all areas of the community is to make sure that you hear those voices and that those voices help to inform your decision making. It isn't the role of staff to take a particular view and push that. It's your role as decision makers. So I think that's perhaps a point of just kind of importance of specificity, I guess. But lots of really good points raised during the submissions and the hearings, and we've been pleased to be able to respond to some of those in the changes to the policy itself that we've brought forward. But happy to take any questions ahead of your deliberations.
Thanks. If I can lead off then, got to stop using the term kick-off. Depends on my attitude, I guess. One of the suggestions that came through this morning was that we review the policy in 3 years in case there is a change in legislation. Do you have any comment on that suggestion, Rhiannon?
Policies are always reviewed if a need arises in between the regular set review period. We have a 6-year review period that we're moving all our policies onto, so that we're not reviewing them more frequently than is necessary, but often situations arise where there's a legislative change and then a review needs to happen. Absolutely.
So they're a moving feast. Once adopted, we're able to amend as required.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Reverend?
Yeah, I had a question about that too, Rhiannon, because whilst I understand the need to be flexible, if we were reviewing, do we necessarily have to go to full public consultation, or could it be an internal review just to, so if there were not significant changes, if it were tweaks, could we do that without going to full consultation?
That would absolutely, for policies, is always a decision and an option put in front of this committee. It's probably something that I wouldn't really recommend in this case because there's such high community interest, and even if ultimately there's few significant changes to the policy, I think that there might be some feeling, quite rightly possibly amongst the disability community, that they nevertheless would not want that review taking place without them and being and participating and involved.
But then we couldn't consult just with them alone. We would have. I think that what the tension in my mind is the high level of demand that a full consultation requires from staff community councillors compared to tweaking documents. But I do understand the difference, so thank you for your response.
Trish?
Rhiannon, in terms of that, you would make notes as things came up, would you, in a policy, not a change, but just for you to go, when we do go back, that's come up. Say there's been new direction by government, not enough to change the policy, but you'd just make a note of it or something, do you?
As part of the sort of general review process for all policies, as issues arise, if they're not significant enough to prompt an immediate review, yes, we do record them. I think for this particular policy, the issues that have arisen have often been operational rather than the policy itself.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks.
Leslie?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, I think the nothing about us without us tag would make it almost impossible to amend this policy without a full consultation. I think there was a lot of talk today about the building of trust, and I think we have to be extremely sensitive about this particular policy and what we're aiming to do with any potential future review of it. I think if we were seen to be taking a unilateral action to even slightly tweak without a full consultation, I think the feedback would be something that would put us back quite a few years. What I do think we got an indication about today was that the community as a whole seems to be telling us that a framework action plan is something that they're very keen on. And there were a lot of bits of that, some of them very operational, but a lot of pieces that could go into an action plan that would perhaps help to build some of that additional trust that we're taking things seriously, that we're monitoring steps, etc. So from an action plan point of view, do you see, from a staff point of view, do you see building an action plan?
Sorry, can't hear you, Leslie.
Sorry, I'm just asking Rhiannon, from a staff point of view, would building an action plan be something that would naturally fall out of the process we've gone through so far? Have we got the elements there to draw together?
I think we have the starting point, but there's no doubt there will be further resource required to produce an action plan. I do think we've heard quite a strong view from the community that would be useful, and there definitely would be some benefits, but there would be some resource implications as well.
Yep, that was my feeling, thank you.
Thank you. Reverend?
Just in a practical sense, and something that mightn't be too hard to implement, given the concerns people have that we don't necessarily consider the implications on the disability community of the decisions that we make, is it worth us having the conversation about incorporating into our papers that we get, just as we do other things, implications and risks, and having impact on the differently able communities if it seems relevant? Because I'm just looking at, I was looking for an example. We've got strategic consistency, financial implications, legal implications, climate change, and then risk as a thing. If that lens was cast over papers presented to us and we saw what the potential of those, I know that how long's a piece of string, is it technically possible? Is it a change of attitude? Is that something that we should consider?
I think that would certainly be a matter that you would consider as part of an action planning kind of process. There are pros and cons, of course. The challenge is that you can't have every issue written into the way that reporting is done, otherwise it gets very unwieldy, both for the report writers and for yourselves. But certainly there's been circumstances where, for example, climate change, where there's a good case for a short-term focus in reporting, but I would say that would be something that would have to be assessed with the governance structures. Yeah, it would have to be part of a review.
Perhaps applying it to infrastructure matters as a beginning?
Absolutely, that could be considered.
Thank you.
Councillors, I'm going to move through the first 4 recommendations and take them as one. First being that we receive the report, receive the submissions, note the submitters to be heard, and note the summary of submissions. Is there a mover?
Yep.
Reverend Cook, Leslie, any discussion on those? If not, I'll put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against? Carried. 5, there are 4 parts to it, and it's either an agrees or disagrees with the changes to the policy. Amendment to the name of the policy, which personally seems to make good sense. I was going to say particularly this week, but actually this week shouldn't matter. The addition of wording to acknowledge the social and medical models of disability. The amendments to wording to make the proposed draft policy more concise and improve readability, which of course goes to the last submission that we heard, and changes to te reo terminology as recommended. So I want to stick the agreed lens on those 4 as a starting point.
Happy to move all of those with agrees.
Thank
as
you,
the
Leslie. Seconded.
position.
Trish? Thank you. Put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So the next 3 are recommendations to council. Excuse me. Well, I want to go to point 7 for a start. Because on a personal view is that I don't want to nominate or see a councillor nominated because the four of us sit here because we have a genuine interest. So much so that we actually volunteered. And I don't, there's so much liaison. And look, there's a degree of trust, but that's something that comes from working with the community. But I think we could probably work on making sure that community were aware that there are a group of us that they can draw on, rather than having one person. If you've got 4 people that they know that they can rely on and build that relationship with, I see that as a stronger point, but that's my opinion. As to the staff member, I'm not even going to touch that with a 10-foot barge pole. I mean, it was really nice that we had some very positive feedback about one, but actually that's an operational matter, and something that the chief executive and the executive leadership team can consider. So I'm interested how the committee feels on a councillor lead. Trish?
I absolutely agree with you. I think that even though they would like a person delegated to do it, I think with, as you say, the 4 people, we could help them at any time. We all know what's going on from the agendas we get, and it would be more effective for the council to operate that way, I think.
Fire?
Yes, I'm in the same position, and I think whilst I take on board the concern that councillors come and councillors go, I think if there's 4 of us, even should I leave, I would expect to be a resource that I'd be prepared to offer to make sure that there was continuity, and most of us probably feel like that. So I think I'd rather that we suggest to our fellow table members that they look at those who are willing to be part of names that can be forwarded for contact. Because I could support those who wanted, say, people who spoke Te Reo Māori or something like that. That's quite a unique position. That's not something everybody at the table could necessarily do. But also, the ability to link people to other people is important, isn't it? So I tend to agree with you. A group of 3 or 4 is much more powerful than one person.
Leslie?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering whether 7 probably needs reworded to request that the Mayor considers the future strength of a councillor group able to lead on disability matters, something that widens it in the way we're discussing.
Is it that we should be part of the liaison committee meetings? You know, what a presence at those,
As we do with Youth Council.
yeah, serve to make a difference.
How regularly are they happening?
Brianna?
Every 6 weeks.
So the likening to youth council is a really useful way of looking at it, because there are 3 of us who are delegated to work with the youth council, and we aren't always all able to attend, but through at least there's generally 2 of us there, and if people at least have the opportunity, we can make sure it's covered. Rhiannon?
Just, I think that group would welcome a council, but I mean, I guess all I'm saying is it's not council's group. We simply support them, and so it would be their decision, and I know that they do need to balance up that there are lots of other issues that are non-council related. So it might be something we could offer attending
every other meeting, it would be an offer rather than a nomination, is all I'm trying to say.
Right. And from their position, it might be easier if there were council things that they wished for us to raise, that we could deal with that at the start of their meetings and then leave as taking their lead from it. So I'm not sure that needs to be a formal resolution. We'll ponder that while we go back to point 6. So I guess the request to the mayor would be to establish a new portfolio, and there could be multiple names on it.
And either request or suggest. I'm taking on board the conversation as it's been.
Yep. Thank you. So let's go back to the recommendations to council. Number 6 is to adopt the draft equity and access policy. As we agreed to, moved by Leslie, seconded Reverend Cook. Any discussion? Put that all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. 7 will become request the mayor establish a disability portfolio, and that the 4 members of this committee become part of it. I'll move that. Seconded by Trish. Get the general gist of it? I'll put that then. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. And then, excuse me, agree or disagree to request the development of an action plan. And as Rhiannon said, it's not going to be swift, but I think if we start one, not putting timeframes around it is useful. So you're moving, Reverend Cook, and Trish, you're seconding?
Yeah,
or?
could I add something
Yes.
to it? I think, I wonder, and the adequate resource, something about the resource needed to go with it? Because
I'm not sure how you measure that.
No, it's just,
And I also don't think it's something we're in a position to say. We'd have to take that under advisement from staff about what resource was available. I want to be, that allocation is their purvey.
Yes, the budgetary implications would be for staff to work out and bring to us for the long-term, for the planning process, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Leslie, sorry.
I was just going to say something very similar. If we're saying we agree to request development of an action plan, then obviously any resourcing implications, request for additional resourcing would come back to us in a staff report.
Thanks. And form part of that process.
Yep.
So it's been moved and seconded. I'll put that. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Mr Chair, may I ask a question just following on from that? I fully appreciate why we're saying 2027, 2037 long-term plan, but that is not restraining staff from proposing something sooner than that they have budget for.
No, if we see a fire, we're not going to wait for a couple of years until we put it out. I can see
Trudy.
Mrs. Hurst springing into action there, so I'll
She's going to
contemplate whether I
restrain me.
afford her the opportunity to speak or not. Of course, Trudy.
Tēnā koe through you, Mr Chair. There is not the budget for this additional resourcing. I have been over my budgets many hours, many days, many times. I have, the policy sits in customer services, and that team is running as lean as it can.
And I'm not sure that that's any different to any other department of council at the moment either. And that's why I think it's important not to wrap timeframes around it. And appreciate that staff are doing the best that they can with what they have. That's not to say that we don't place importance on it, and it really, I think, implementation-wise is an issue-by-issue thing. When we see something where there is an obvious need, we can act on it. And that's no different to the decision-making process we go through for anything. At the moment, you know, we are running lean across every department. Sorry, somebody had a hand that went up there in my peripheral. Leslie, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say we're basically recommending to council development of an action plan. And like any other unbudgeted expenditure, we would expect to be told that it would need an additional allocation.
And then we've got 4 squeaky wheels that can go on and advocate for it. Squeak, squeak. Councillors, Reverend, thank you very much for your time this morning. And can I take a moment to acknowledge all the people that made submissions and also took part in the pre-consultation, and the amount of pre-consultation that the staff have been involved with in putting this together, which I think significant would be polite Kiwi understatement. But that's because it is significant to us. So thank you to the staff for your work as well. We have our recommendations from this and the recommendations that go through to council. Thank you very much to New Zealand Sign Language interpreters for your participation. 24 years in local government, another first. May they continue to come. Thank you, councillors. I declare the hearing closed.